Get out my Get out my
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's the pilot episode of Fighter and the Geek with me and Lee Robson. Some of you may know me and be familiar with my face. I'm former unlicensed and bare knuckle champion and now current and active journeyman on the professional boxing scene. We've got a lot of content coming for the up and coming weeks, people. Every Monday, tune in because it's going to be absolutely unbelievable. I'll pass over to Lee.
My name's Lee. Obviously, you'll be aware of me from my Bad Blood podcast. Obviously, my associations with the bare knuckle world as well, like Seamus was in. But now we're affiliated with FightZone, professional boxing. So we're going to head into that direction too. But yeah, like Seamus has said, we've got some absolutely amazing content coming up for you. I'm just going to offload a couple of sponsors first. I'd like to give a massive shout out to ScotWest Shellfish. I don't need to express how much you are a massive help to me, so really appreciate your help. Mr. Bloom, Black Seed Oil Mechanics. Mr. Bloom, you are the man. You got me the studio, so I will be forever in debt. Also, Lookin Barbers. They've just come on board, so I'd like to give them, honestly, the fantastic haircut. If you're a local listener, go over, have a look. Best haircut in town, and they've got the best sunbeds in town by a country mile. Also, last but not least, Fearless Fitness. Obviously, my co-host in the podcast world, Matty Ferries, he's become a big boy now. He's got his own gym. It's booming. His fighters have got fights coming up in the unlicensed scene, so good luck to them. And yeah,
all
that's
the best
it.
to those boys. All the best. To them, lad.
Boom, Seamus. We're first
Hello,
one.
Son.
It's
the pilot episode, my friend. The pilot episode. Fighter and the Geek. Absolute pleasure, my friend. Absolute pleasure.
Honestly, couldn't have thought of a better person to actually do it with. But let's start with some absolutely crazy news, madness news, but also some extremely important news to what I would consider grassroots boxing. Former European champion Jamie Moore, he's opened up a ABC gym, which if the common fan doesn't know, it's the amateur boxing club. It's called the Walkden ABC. Seamus, setting up a club like that in itself is humongously a huge task.
Amazing, mate.
It's where the likes of yourself start. How pivotal are these to the sport of boxing?
Massively integral. Integral means the most necessary, my friend. I mean, just a few little things that I can touch on there. One, I wasn't even aware that he'd actually opened that until you told me earlier on today. So that's great news, absolutely great news, especially the people in that local community and the kids that are full of energy in that local community, as there will be dozens of them. But the amateur pedigree, the amateur grassroots, I never had an amateur background. For people that don't know, I started off at 27 years old. I'd never boxed a day in my life. So what can occur then from that is the first 10 months I was training myself. So what happens is you go into the gym, you're finding different people to pad you, because any training at the start is good training the way you see it. But what's happening is you're hardwiring bad habits. You're already hardwired because you're hitting the pads and you've got a guy who does boxer size, whatever. No disrespect to these people that aren't qualified to make competent boxers. So you've got a guy holding the pads and you're smacking it, it's making a loud noise, everything's fun. You know what I mean? All the other giblets. But what's happening is if he's saying great work and your shots are wrong, you're not turning your shot over properly, you're not putting your hips into your shot, your chin's coming up, your chin's not tucked behind your shoulder, all these things, you're not doing those things, and you're getting told good work, you're going to continue to do those things. Now, what's going to happen there? Then you're going to hardwire those bad habits into your game. So this is why it's massively important, and I'd stress to anybody, go in the amateurs. Go in the amateurs. Places like this, what Jamie Moore opening, go to these. But these places are so integral. I can't stress enough. The foundations of boxing, that's where you'll find them in places like that. That's where you'll find them. The unlicensed game, like I said, too many bad habits you'll hardwire into your own game. And then you have to get them back out. You have to scrap everything you think you know, you think you've learned when you go to a gym that knows what's what. So yeah, the amateur game is massively integral. Well, I can't stress enough.
It's weird how unlicensed gets classed as semi-pro, but yet your higher caliber is in your amateur boxing. Do you know?
Yeah, it's strange. It's strange. It's a little grey because the amateur, but like I say, it's all about the fundamentals. That's drilled into you. The fundamentals. There's no stone unturned in the amateur game, and they're all young and exuberant, aren't they? As well. 9 times out of 10. So yeah, but the unlicensed game, semi-pro, whatever term, mate. I don't like using the term semi-professional myself. But whatever term you want to use, mate, whatever tickles you, whatever floats your boat. But like you said, the amateur game, there's way more, no disrespect, quality, and it's because of the fundamentals that they're trained properly. There's an overseeing eye constantly. You're not taking yourself off to pad sessions with different people. You are training under one affiliation, one gym, that 1 or 2 men, sometimes there's a couple of men on the team, but they're overseeing what you're doing day in, day out. So they're molding, they're sculpting. It's like a blank canvas, and they're imprinting on that canvas what they will, and they're building competent, efficient boxers, because that's just as important, mate. I've learned this, being efficient with your energy.
Yeah.
So you're always learning, mate. Never, ever stop. The moment you think in this game, I've got this pegged here, I've learned everything, you'll be stuck in the mud, and you'll find that that's incorrect pretty soon down the line.
100%, because it's like it's like you've got to sharpen your tools. It's you've got to keep applying at your trade. Like things evolve. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to keep evolving in what you're doing as well. You could not. It's like a footballer. A footballer just going to the match on the Saturday, kicking the ball about in scrum training. Do you know what I mean? It's a whole different thing. You've got to apply. You've got to do the work behind the scenes for 100%. That big day. Do you know what I'm saying?
About the word that you used there, Lee, because about an hour or two before we come on here to do this broadcast, I was talking to someone, and I said the word I used was, you cannot cheat the evolution of a fighter. And you said evolve. You can't cheat that evolution. You cannot do it. If you try and cheat it, you can't fast track either. I've learned this. You've got to just know your lane, stay in it, train hard, stay. The most important thing I always say is with consistency. Because believe you me, there's some of these lads out there are getting up and running at 5 in the morning, working jobs, coming on, doing a second session. They're living and breathing this, and you'll come unstuck. When you get in a ring with someone like you, will come unstuck, because you've got to be able to go through the gears. Like my coach and manager, Curtis Gargano, says, shout out Curtis. He says there's gears, and you've got to know when to go through the gears. And with these prospects, they go through them gears, and you've got to have them gears to match them. You've got to be able to go through the gears. It's difficult, mate. It is difficult, but a rewarding sport as well, my friend.
Yeah, I just think it's a great thing that Jimmy has done. Excuse me. I just think if the support and the actual knowledge that he can bring to that club itself, it's going to be massive. And like you say, the community, they're going to thrive off it. So I believe they're, like I say, the first show's on the 30th at the Ellesmere shopping centre. But he did give massive praise. I haven't read the whole article. He did give massive praise to Charlotte Gilly from the Maverick Stars Trust, which I've never heard before. So massive shout out to Charlotte Gilly. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not very often that boxing does get boxing. It's always left out of funding. Everything like for instance, when the government were giving the handouts and stuff like that, boxing didn't get a sniff. like boxing
No,
got zero.
that's
Do you know
correct.
what I mean?
Yeah.
We had to work in the grassroots. Some were closing, and that was yeah. It's just I can't elaborate on how exciting and how good it is. What a job they've
Brilliant,
done.
mate. Every community, small or big, needs that sort. You know, they need that. They need that, mate. Sport. You just look at the crime rate in some of these areas when they have these gyms. The crime rate lowers. You know what I mean? The statistics speak for themselves. The proof's in the pudding, mate. I've seen it for myself with my own eyes. You see it, and you know some of the characters that you meet and some of the lads that you meet. If they weren't in that gym, they weren't training, they weren't around boxing, God knows where they'd be, mate. And they probably say that themselves. God knows where they'd be, mate. I know myself, boxing saved me. It sounds cliched. It does. You hear it day in, day out almost now, especially I've got 3,000 people on my social media and more than 50% are from the fighting fraternity or the fighting community. You do hear it a lot. It sounds cliched, but in my case and in many other people's cases, mate, it does save lives. It really does. So big shout out, Jamie Moore. That's going to be a good venture. I wish him all the best in that. Like I said, these guys, unsung heroes, aren't they? But Jamie Moore's already got a high profile. But these guys doing what they're doing behind the scenes, because it's away from the business side. It's away from the glitz and the glamour.
It is.
It's the grassroots. It's where all the time and energy spent, and you're not getting that time back.
You're
that energy. So unsung heroes. Massive shout out to Jamie Moore. And I wish him all the best with that.
Yeah, same here too. Another thing, just wanted to touch upon Ryan Garcia. I know we've made a massive switch there, but Ryan Garcia, recently, he's struggled with his mental health. We're no stranger to mental health ourselves.
Indeed.
How did he's saying he's coming out of it? He's starting to like control it, and he's becoming not, should I say comfortable? Should I say is the right word? But he's learning how to live with it day by day. What is the best advice you could possibly give him? Because when you are in that state of mind, you don't think there's anywhere else to go. And for him to hit the heights that he did, just after the Campbell fight as well. I know Campbell had COVID in the lead up to that fight, but just Ryan Garcia was on such a pedestal. And his trajectory was great. It was fast. Massive,
I mean,
fast.
Even it was huge. In the space of a year or two, he'd become almost a global superstar.
Yeah.
And social media, I think, helped along with that. But best advice, because I think, how old is he, Ryan Garcia, now?
I don't know if he's
early 20s, mid 20s.
100%. Do you not think, though, that social media and having to think that, because I do believe that he had millions and millions of followers on social media. Do you not think that had a part to play where he constantly thought he had to do something every day to keep them happy? Or do you think that had a part to play?
Good point, that, Lee. I think that, social media exacerbates, makes things worse. It exacerbates a lot of things. Like you said there, if you look at those sort of numbers, that sort of responsibility. And some people might say, what do you mean responsibility? Well, Healer took that on. He knows how many people are following him. He'll know the numbers. Yeah. He'll see the reactions. He'll see the admiration people have for him. So that's his public, so to speak. And when you've got that, and then you're fully aware of that, and the millions of people that'll be watching you around the world, what you got to remember is, that's why I asked about his age. He's a young lad.
Yeah.
He's still a kid in terms of being a man. So it might have been, like I say, it might have created some anxiety. And I mean, I think I was 24 myself, 23 when I got my first anxiety attack. I didn't know what anxiety was. It wasn't a part of my life at all, mate. So it might have gotten a bit of anxiety, might have crept in. And then obviously to a young lad who's on top of the world, that feeling might have made him feel inadequate, a bit weak.
Yeah.
It could have started from there and spiraled, mate. These things, you never know. There's a lot of variables, mate. But I would say that the social media presence and things, I think it does exacerbate, definitely makes things get worse. It makes things spiral, no doubt.
Because, like you say, there is a responsibility there, and you're still going through, like you say, he's in his early 20s. He's still learning himself. Do you know what I mean? And anything little, you're talking with millions of followers. It could take anybody just to pick out the smallest thing, and that could just blow things out of proportion for him, because you know yourself, when you suffer mental health, it just takes the one thing to just go up and just kick you off, man, and that's it. Boom,
100%.
you're gone.
100%. But if anybody, one thing I've learned, if anyone can get out of those depths, it's fighters. Because one thing we are good at, that we've shown, is that resolve, that persistence, that tenacity. I mean, you can't get to the levels that he got to, you know what I'm saying, without having that sort of self-belief, that sort of internal discipline. So I think he will come out of it okay. But like I said, you've got to change things. Sometimes you've got to sit back. It's hindsight. It's a friend. It can be a friend or it can be an enemy. You've got to sit back and analyze the situation months down the line. And then you can analyze the situation and maybe you can put your finger on it. But you've got to change things. I've learned this. If you repeat the same behavior and expect something different to arise, it's insanity, mate. So maybe he has to change things up. The worst thing a fighter can do, was it Custom Martin who said it? I don't know, I'm not too sure. So the worst thing a fighter can do is become civilized. When they're on this social media, mate, and they're out there a lot more, they're not maybe as hungry as they should be. Maybe they're not in the dungeons. Maybe they're not getting cold and wet, so to speak. But we'll see. Time will tell, mate. But it'll be interesting to see if he comes back from this adversity, mate. It's always a good selling point as well, isn't it? The comeback, the rise always being greater than the fall.
Yeah, rise from the ashes.
100%.
Tyson Fury type style. Is there any particular fights you would like to see Ryan Garcia in? Would like a tank fight?
Do you know what? That division though now, mate, I think there's a he's at light, isn't it? That division is just, it's hot in right.
Very hot.
Now with the tier 4 more Lopez, Cambosos, Junior, all these fighters out there, mate, in those divisions. A lot of those fighters I bet could drop or give or take either way, up or down the division. So around that area, 140, 147 and below, them divisions are just red hot at the minute. But no particular one, mate, that I've thought of at the minute. No particular one that I can think of at the top of my head. But like I said, there's a lot of fighters in that division. I think you could match some absolute beauties there, some absolute classics.
Yeah, from 135 to up to 147, there is some tremendous fights to me.
It's red hot, mate. And I think if you look at boxing in general for the last 20, 30 years, it's been that way. The heavyweight division went to sleep for 2 decades, didn't it? You know, it was a bit of a boring era, the Klitschko era, but those divisions have always remained red hot, in my opinion. They've always been absolute value for money, mate. Some of the biggest names and stars in boxing come out of those, like I said, 135 to 147 and in and around that area. But Garcia, there's a few, mate. There's a few in there that you could think of the top of the head. There's
definitely.
A few.
And
you know what? I don't think that he'd want to get back into the mix that quick.
That's what I was thinking.
That'll be an interesting thing to see what routes he's going to take.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The next step, because although we know mental health, you can't just snap yourself out of it. It takes months. Sometimes people, it takes years.
The process, definitely.
The process, yes. So I was thinking to myself, what type of fight would he want to come back to? And it will be interesting to see where he goes. Another fighter who I wanted to touch upon, because Alvarez.
Canelo Alvarez.
Yes, a lot is up in the air. I mean, you hear this, you hear that. Is he going to move up? Is he going to maintain? Is he going to do this? Is he going to do that? So, light heavyweight. Everybody's talking, I better behave, right? Now, as we were talking earlier, like before we started, do you think he's really going to go for him straight away? Or do you think he is going to take one of the top 4? Because, like I say, I've got down here, Ramirez, Smith Jr., he's just won recently.
That's another viable option. That would be I don't like an option, but, you know, it would be. To be fair, I don't think he'll go. Saying that though, we don't know. It's up to his management ultimately. Canelo doesn't pick the fights himself. If he was to pick the fight himself, I'm sure he'd go straight for the number 1. But they'll have a route in mind. I'm sure they'll pick the right decision. But I think we touched on it earlier as well when we spoke earlier before going live. I'd have liked to see him fight Demetrius Andrade myself.
Yes, 1,000,000%.
I really would have loved to have seen that fight.
Style's awkward, man.
For a few reasons, as we touched on earlier. I mean, that style, that timing, that upper body movement, the timing of his movement, his feet are always seem to be in the right position. He's hard to pin down and hit. In the Williams fight, he looked gassed. He was breathing heavy after 4 or 5 rounds, and somehow he managed to dig deep, and he just kept that pace up for 12 rounds. And he was phenomenal, mate. And I know that Canelo says he's a horrible fighter, a bit awkward. he's looked awkward, but I enjoyed watching him. I don't know what other people's opinions are on that, but I really enjoyed watching him and enjoyed his performance against Williams. And I would have preferred to see that, but it looks like he's going to take the step up to the higher weights.
Just like you said before, Alvarez said he's a horrible. How do we interpret that, though? Like we touched earlier, does that mean style-wise? Does that mean like it would be because Alvarez? I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, he's going to sit there and worry because he fights any man.
Yeah, I don't think
You know
he does
what I mean?
look worrying, does he, mate?
But why not Andrade? Just to solidify and clear that whole division.
Yeah, 100%, mate. That's what I'd have liked to have seen. That's what I'd have liked to have seen. I think that would have been but then again, you've got to look at this, like I said before, this is a business. And would it make more sense for him financially and otherwise, legacy wise? Yeah. Or does it not? Do you know what I mean? Sometimes it's all good us wanting something because we have a particular thing that we favour or a particular outcome we want to see. But if it doesn't make business sense, it'll make business sense for Andrade, no doubt. And I think Canelo, he didn't allude to that, did he? But yeah, so I would have liked to have seen that fight, but I don't think it would have made sense to Canelo to take that fight financially from a business perspective. But yeah, that'll be interesting to see his next move. I think everybody's anticipating that next move because at the minute he is the face of boxing. At the minute, he definitely, there's no doubt about it.
Definitely not. Everybody's learned that mistake. Well, not everybody's learned the mistake, but there's lessons to be learned. I'm referring to Roy Jones Jr. When he went on his crusade, going up 5 weight divisions.
That's correct.
To come back down. Do you think Alvarez is that? I'm not going to say stupid, silly, or do you think he'll do that, or do you think once he gets, do you think he'll stick to where he's at next? Because
it's hard to say, man. I think he wants to break records. It's obvious from the way he's changing weight divisions, like he changes his fucking underwear. He's definitely, he's after doing something special. He's after cementing his legacy. His accolades are speaking for themselves at the minute. I've never actually seen the comparison. I've never looked at that, the ascension of both fighters, because Roy Jones did that. When was it? 2003, was it? 2002, all around that area. It was
he fought Ruiz.
Ruiz, that's correct. Ruiz, that's correct.
John Ruiz.
Ruiz, when he was more, I won't say in his prime, but he was definitely still. Because who was it he fought? Who was it who fought Ruiz? Was it Hay?
Oh,
it was David Hay, wasn't it?
David Hay, yes.
Yeah, he defended. I think he defended a WBA heavyweight title against Ruiz, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and he did. He looked at, no disrespect, he looked a shell of himself at that point. But yeah, that was the route that he took, Roy Jones Jr. It'll be different to the route that Canelo takes, I'm presuming. But I don't see him going any further than light heavy or cruiserweight. Surely not. Surely not.
It's just with his height and his frame.
His height and I just don't see him fitting into anything higher than that. It would. You never know, though, mate. He's a freak of nature, isn't he, the guy?
Carries his power, as we touched upon earlier as well. Like that.
I think that's the scariest point about it. I think that's where a lot of question marks get raised with him as well. I think a lot of athletes have mentioned it publicly and said, listen, it just doesn't seem possible. We've all tried it. A lot of fighters have tried it and no one's ever seemed to do it. But he seems to do it with relative ease.
I've never seen like when Canelo fought Mayweather, like it's literally like when he fought Mayweather, Mayweather's like information, like a computer, Alvarez's computer took all Mayweather's information, downloaded it, installed it, and I've never seen a fighter learn from a fight so much in my life.
That was I liked that what you said there. That's absolutely spot on. Almost like he was downloading the information. I was saying this to my friend before. I said, if you watch that fight, that was a pivotal moment in his career.
Very.
Because if you watch Canelo, his style changed.
100%.
There was a lack. If you look at those fights back then, the fights leading up to that, his upper body movement, head movement was nowhere near what it is now. It's almost like you said, he learned so much from that fight, and he evolved as a fighter. Like we said, you can't cheat the evolution. Mayweather was the master of his craft.
The master.
Oh mate, it's an art form in it to watch him. He just makes boxing look easy.
It does.
He really does. But yeah, Canelo learnt so much from that. But again, I'd have loved to have seen that run back.
100%.
No, but Mayweather, it wouldn't be the same because Mayweather's well into his 40s now, innit? So
100%.
It would have been the same.
Like when he fought McGregor, like people, I know they say he hit more times than Pacquiao, but Mayweather allowed McGregor to land punches on him. Like because people always say, oh, McGregor outlanded him more and more, but he let McGregor hit him. That was, he said it himself. He walked him down, tried to walk him down for 10 rounds. He knew when he was going to stop him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's how good.
You could see when McGregor was throwing certain shots, mate. You could just see that Mayweather was allowing him to let that work go, and he could have countered a lot of that work. You don't have to watch Mayweather's performances. There was so many openings. I think he was not just luring him into false insecurity. He was letting the show run a little bit, letting them get a few rounds, giving them a little bit of something. Maybe some of them fickle fans that are, oh look, McGregor's winning. What? Because it was obvious. An avid boxing fan was watching that and knew he was never stressed. His body language never gave that off. He was never
in trouble.
He was comfortable. He was calm. And some of them punches that were coming from McGregor in the mid to later rounds before he got stopped was weird.
Yeah, it was very weird. Really
weird. Shots, and it was really, really strange to see. I mean, it was obvious to me that he'd come from MMA.
He had spent these, like you said, efficiency, energy. He just failed to transfer. Like you say, you know when to throw in boxing and when not to. That's the type of efficiency. That's what we're speaking about. There's times to throw and times not to throw.
100%.
And that will expand and give you further in the tank. And like you say, I just agree with what you just said there. With the Mayweather thing, he allowed him to the avid boxing fan. It looked like, to the fickle boxing fans, it looked like he was doing something. But to the avid one, nah.
We knew what the crack was, mate. He's a defensive genius. You only have to look at his resume. I mean, I think efficient is one of the main words I'd use to describe Floyd Mayweather. If you look at Floyd Mayweather, he never, end of 12 rounds, he looks like he has another 12 or 15 in him. He's so efficient.
Very.
He's obviously looked after his mind and his body over the years, but just a master of that efficiency, mate. So good to watch. Unless you're, like I say, a bit more of the fickle fan, a bit more of an armchair fan, and you want to see, there's nothing wrong with that. It's entertaining. You see a brawl, but the boxing purist and the pugilist fans, they love watching a Mayweather performance.
Do you know what? I must admit this. I hated that man after he beat Hatton. Hated him.
I think a lot of people, it was our own, weren't he? He beat one of our own in Ricky, didn't he? So I was wounded, but it was just, I knew that Ricky was tailor-made for him. I knew that Ricky was tailor-made for him. But again, Cortez did not allow him to work on the inside.
100%.
I think a lot of the British fans might have put a bit too much emphasis on that. But he didn't allow, I've watched it back several times, but he did not allow him to work on the inside. Ricky did actually better than what I remembered. He actually did really well, mate.
He did.
It was wounding, mate. To finish the way it finished, I felt sick, mate. You know what I mean? Everyone loved Ricky. The following said it all with Ricky. It was one of the best, weren't he? It was a national treasure, lad.
100%. I think I picked every fighter Mayweather fought after that. I just picked every fighter against Mayweather. It's like, I loved Ricky Hatton. I still love the man now. Do you know what I mean? What he done for the sport. Like you say, they carried all them thousands of people across the pond.
I don't think there's been anything like it since, Lee.
Ring Magazine fighter, Ring Magazine champion, beat Tazoo. Do you know what I mean?
Classic.
Very, very, very underrated in what he done. Massive props to Ricky. Huge props to Ricky, actually.
Massive shout out to Ricky Hatton. Massive shout out. I'll just mention as well tonight, people were supposed to have on our guest. Unforeseen circumstances stopped that, but we will be having him on a later date. We'll keep you posted on that. Shane Singleton. Shane Singleton won 6 titles in his illustrious career. He had, I think it was 27 fights. He was a 27-fight veteran, 23 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw.
Yeah,
he
correct.
fought the likes of Kev McCauley, Will Warburton, one of my favourite journeymen, Johnny Greaves, on his way up before beating Adelanwar for the WBC silver. He beat
Sam
Curtis
Eggington
for the English title. He fought Sam Eggington. An absolute pleasure to have that man on. So we'll be keeping you posted on that. Yeah, so for unforeseen circumstances, we couldn't have him on today, but we will be having him on a later date. And there's also some very, very juicy guests that are coming on. I don't. Should we mention?
Mention a couple.
Maybe mention a couple. One guy that I've been speaking to that we're going to get on a later date. We'll keep. But is Joe Laws.
Yes, my brother.
Absolute character. I don't think he needs much of an introduction. I think most of the people watching the segment will be familiar with who Joe Laws is. So that's just one of the little treats we have in store for you people. There's going to be loads of additional features. I think we've mentioned before. We're going to do a little fun boxing fact every show. We're going to do a little boxing question at the end. See if for the avid boxing fans out there, see who's quick on the uptake.
Yep. 100%.
Massive things coming. Like I say, the first guest will be Shane Singleton, one of the finest boxers from Colne, Lancashire, not far from my ends. And also, there's a new thing to touch on with Shane, but I'll allow him to speak about that when the show's on. There's a new chapter opening, but like I say, I'll not elaborate. I'll let Shane speak about that when he's on. But yeah, it's going to be amazing.
That's exciting because that's what I did want to ask him at that, because 2017 was his last fight.
Yeah, he retired at 28 years old.
He did, yes.
28 in 2017. He hung up the gloves. He fell out of love with boxing. I think he made that. I'm not speaking on his behalf here. All this was publicised. So yeah, I think he fell out of love with boxing. He retired, but maybe there's another chapter to be opened yet. But like I said, I'll let Shane speak about that. But maybe there's unfinished business in the professional game. But yeah, he's got some story to tell, mate. And he come from the amateur background. Some of the lads that he shared the ring with in the amateurs are also going to be future guests.
Fantastic.
Everybody knows Jamie Quinn. Massive shout out, Jamie. He'll be a future guest of ours. He's an actor, mate. I think he's had somewhere 140 plus fights now.
Wow.
Yeah, amazing, mate. He had an amateur. I think him and Shane fought in the amateurs, if I'm not mistaken. Sam Kit Larkin, massive shout out. He'll also be a and that's all I'm giving you, people. That's all I'm giving you. But believe me, we've got a juicy list down here of fighters.
We have got it all locked, ready and loaded. Seamus obviously will be making appearances in the studio too as well. We'll get all that sorted and we'll be dropping that in letting you know, because obviously, as stated, Seamus is currently an active fighter, and I believe you were the most active fighter last year.
Yes, mate, that's right. I had 17 professional bouts in 4.5 months, which I don't think anybody else did. I'm pretty sure I was the most active journeyman in the UK. I think that's official. I'm pretty sure it is. I look to do more than that this year. I want to try, massive shout out Peter Buckley, the ultimate journeyman Peter Buckley.
Yeah, big shout out Peter Buckley.
Massive shout out. He fought them all, 300 plus fights. He did 29 in a year.
Wow.
So I'm looking to match that, or maybe if I could, if I can, because I will take nothing for granted. And the men, they did that for a reason, because they were, honestly, mate, there was something else. But if I can achieve that, I'll die a happy man, mate. So I'll die a happy man.
What I wanted to ask you when we spoke the other day on the phone, I don't know if you want to give too much away, but you said a lot's changing now, like up there and boxing wise. Like, can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Are you coming with more?
100%.
Yeah, you're coming. You're ready.
I'm changing. I can give it away. It's no secret anyway, mate. You know, everyone knows you're gonna have to be top of your game in this game. There is no shortcut. So yeah, last year I trained the hardest I've ever trained in my whole career. That was the hardest I've trained and the most consistent. I didn't touch alcohol. I did not touch drugs, nothing. That's one thing I will never do. You know what I mean? You can't do that when you're training. So last year was the most consistent I have been. But towards the end of the year, I'd slipped into journeyman mode, admittedly. My eating habits come back a little bit. So I was struggling a little bit more than usual because I was making weight a piece of piss. I made under 11 stone.
Wow.
Not French, but I made it a piece of piss, mate. I made under 11 stone last year when I fought Conor Lynch, who's now 9-0, good up and coming fights under Kieran Farrell. Massive shout out to them boys.
Kieran Farrell.
And I made 10 stone 12, 10, 13. But towards the end of the year, it was hard. I think I was on a 13, 14 fight losing streak. It's hard, mate, to keep the motivation going, to keep on top of the diet. You've been fighting week in, week out at different weights. It gets really hard. So I admittedly had slipped back into a few bad habits. No drink, no drugs, just a few. My eating habits was the main one. And so my weight was spiraling a little bit and I was struggling to make the weight a little bit. I felt a little bit undermotivated, but you know what, mate? I give myself a tap on the back because I got through that schedule and I did it with a smile on my face, and there wasn't not one fight I did last year that I did not want to be there in. Not one. I was there. I was ready. I was in the gym all the time. I was 90% of the time eating well until the back end of the year, but I was eating well. I was on it, mate, on the crest of a wave. I was happy getting the experience. I was happy saving shows, going out there, testing prospects, getting that environment experience. But this year, I want to get results, mate. I want to get results. But what I've done is I've started doing a few little different things. Some things I've already mentioned publicly on podcasts before, the cold bath methods, hydrotherapy, like cryotherapy. I think that's one of the terms for it. Absolutely brilliant. Believe me, brilliant. Not just physically, mentally. Try it. If it works for you, it works for me. The cold bath treatment, the ice baths, absolutely brilliant, mate. So yeah, I was doing them a lot anyway, but I've started doing them regular again. Started doing meditation. People need to look into that Reiki, power of touch, a little bit of meditation, mixing that in there. It's hard. Before I used to try and do it, mate, and within 2 minutes I will switch back onto something, or something would creep back into my head, or my phone would go off or something like that, and before you know it, I'm back out. But started doing that. My diet is spot on. For the last 10, 11 days, my diet has been spot on. Perfect. I'm eating at set times. I'm eating the right amounts. I'm eating the right stuff, more importantly, the right stuff. I've got rid of all my bad habits. I'm getting good sleep, good hydration levels. I'm taking good supplements, and I'm just investing in myself, mate, mentally and physically. And people are going to see a different me this year. I promise that, mate. I promise that.
Yeah, because that's, you touched upon it there. Like, there's not many people get to know the insights of what you're telling people. I mean, because I hate the term journeyman. I really do. I believe every fighter has got his purpose. That's just my belief. How hard is it to keep the motivation going when you know you're on that sort of a streak?
Yeah. It's that, I'd say that's the main aspect, Lee. I think that's what people don't, because some people must think, oh well, it's sweet, he's going in there, he's getting the job done, he's coming out. He's not coming out hurt. He's coming out safe. He's earning his dough and he's going home safe to the family. But I'm a proud fighting man, mate. Yeah. So there's a psychological healing process to a defeat. And when you're fighting week in, week out, you ain't giving yourself time. There ain't no time to sit there and dwell about that. You're going back out. You're back out there. So you become hardened. Yeah. You become conditioned to it. That's where you can't buy experience, mate. You become seasoned. But what happens then is, like I said, you slip into journeyman mode. It's okay to lose you out of the week. You're getting the job done. And that hurts you as a proud man. That hurts you.
Yeah, so because you're a former champion. I mean, you're not just a former champion and unlicensed. You're a former champion in bare knuckle, which is hard to do. You know what I mean? And it's a big testament to what you are doing now, and the level of, not composure, consistency, and the level of motivation that you keep for consistency.
Yeah, it is. It's hard, mate. It's hard, but there's, like I said, there's your subconscious, a lot of it. Reprogram your subconscious. So I flip my perception. I do it often. I'll make conscious effort. So when a little voice creeps in that you want to stay in bed, or I'll just do a few kilometers today. Do you know what I'm saying? Everyone has that voice. We all have that voice. Just get rid of that, flip it. So when someone can find 3 reasons to stay in bed, I'll find 6 reasons to get out of it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that's me, mate. And that's how I've kept going. And just reprogram that subconscious. But I'm learning now as well. Like I said, you're always learning to not necessarily always go into autopilot and train hard. Train smart. Train smart. Switch your routine up. Don't run the same way all the time. Keep things fresh so it's not monotonous. Eat different things. Switch up your meals. Honestly, silly little things like this, mate, make a massive difference, because familiarity breeds contempt.
Yes.
And that was my old mother who taught me that, mate. Never truer words spoken than that. Familiarity breeds contempt. And it is so true, mate. But yeah, people are going to see a different me this year, Lee, 100%.
I'm going to use that term from now on. I like that. I like that term very, very much. There's no, honestly, it's going into fear in boxing. A man stepping into the ring, no one going into to fight another man who's trained as much, if not as hard as you, to do the same amount of damage. It's a scary feeling. Everybody gets it. But how do you control that? Not just you, but people you've met amongst the scene whilst you've been on the professional scene.
Yeah, well, do you know something? I'd say the calmest changing room, the best changing room to be in, is the Journeyman changing room, mate. It's a lot less tense in the away changing room. But yeah, do you know, I think the calmest people, the Journeyman, because they get that used to it, they get that season to it, switching off, switching on. I mean, everyone's different. Some people I'll see fall asleep for an hour or two. And then when it's like 2 fights before them, they'll wake up, get stretched off, get ready, and they go. That doesn't work for me. But the professional boxing, the standard, I think, because a lot of them at this point in the professional game, and a lot of the people that at least I meet and I'm coming into contact with, veterans, there's a level of composure you don't see in the unlicensed and bare knuckle game due to the fact that these guys are just seasoned. They're just seasoned, but the nerves are still there. You can see it. They're always on the surface. It's like a kettle on simmer. You know what I mean? You can't let it boil. Don't let it pop. You got to keep control. Any man that says to you he's not feeling nervous is either mentally ill or he's lying to you.
Yeah,
and he's lying to you because it's scary, mate. You're stepping off into a roped off area, and in the professional game, or depending what platform, like the Bellum show, I knew there'd be thousands of people watching, along with the hundreds of people that were there. You're stepping into a roped off area, and the guy's trying to take your head off. He's trying to snatch your consciousness from you. Or, do you know what I mean? That is, yeah, and that is strong kid, Joe. You know, strong kid. But that is it's my idea of fun. Thing is with me, mate, like I said, it's all about that perception. I enjoy it. I don't know if you heard the podcast they did, the Jingle Bells podcast, where they mentioned. I haven't.
I've been working on this.
I got a really good shout out on that, mate. I can't remember the two fellas' names. They're well known in the media game in boxing circles.
Right.
And I got a good shout out on there, and they mentioned that I was playing the part, the ultimate pantomime villain, the way I was. And that's the way. I think Bartley Gorman said it. The stage is set, and I'll play my part. And I honestly feel it's a bit of me when I used to watch it as a kid. Chris Eubanks, all those guys, and I used to look and think, that's a bit of me, that. Do you know what I mean? I love it, the showman side of it, mate. So my fear turns into excitement because it's there. I do have it, but I turn it and transmute it into something positive. It gets you tingling. It'll make your hair stand up on your arms and the back of your neck, mate. And when you walk through there's nothing like it. If I could bottle that, Lee, I'd be a millionaire, my son. I really would.
Obviously, you were super active last year, the most active fighter last year. Out of all them shows since the new year, what was the one that made the hairs stand up on your back in your neck?
It was that Prebellum one, mate.
Was it?
That, yeah,
I thought.
They got my tune wrong, by the way. They got my, it was supposed to be Paddy on the Landfill, but they got that wrong. The tune they played, I've heard before. It's on one of my playlists, and I've heard that tune before, and I'm actually quite fond of it. So it was a good second. But to hear that tune coming out, the Irish tune coming out, to see my name when I watched it back, to see my name on the big screen, it was something else, mate. When I was walking out there, mate, it was something else. But I've been on some mint shows, mate. It's all about that atmosphere, not so much the show, but it's about the atmosphere. I mean, I fought Jake Andrews in Oldham. That was a mint atmosphere. Balraj Singh down in Essex, he come out with a team playing the drums to mate. I was buzzing. I had to switch off from his walkout and remind myself I was fighting him. I was just enjoying his walkout. Yeah, there's been some absolute crackers, mate. But that rush, there's nothing. Any fighter will tell you the same. There'll be fighters that will watch this when it goes out. Danny Christie mentioned it the other day the James Ings, but massive shout out, Danny, lads.
Yeah,
Massive
big shout out to
to
Danny, my brother.
He mentioned it the other day. There's nothing like it. Nothing like it, mate. And that's how I feel about it. I'm passionate about it. Some people, it might be, I don't know, playing a musical instrument, football, I don't know, knitting, whatever, ballet. Combat sports, and it's my favourite's pugilism, mate.
Snap, same here. Just now, I just don't like competing. I just like teaching. Honestly, my time in that sport is well done. Sparring, everything. I like to get in now and then and move with lads, but it's just to keep fit. Do you know what I mean?
Did you have any? Did you have amateur fights, Lee?
I only had the one, and do you know what? I won the fight. I stopped the kid in the second round. The fight I chucked the towel in. It was at Berkeley Boxing Club. I'm not sure if you've heard of Berkeley Boxing Club, but it's one of the most renowned in the
Familiar
Northeast.
with Berkeley, mate? Yeah.
Yeah. God bless his soul, Ronnie Rowe. Fantastic coach. Passed away, I believe it was 2 years ago. He was in the opposite corner. But yeah, that I didn't sleep after 3 days, mate. The nerves. It was the crowd.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Lee. I was saying this to somebody not so long ago. I don't sleep well. The adrenaline's still there. I don't sleep when I'll go sleep at 7 in the morning and be out of bed at 9:30, 10 in the morning, and I'm still buzzing about, and you still feel dead scatty and weird. It's a really weird feeling, but
100%.
also very addictive. And that rush, it's also very, very addictive.
I don't believe that. Honestly, don't get us wrong. I loved sparring. I loved it. Do you know what I mean? It was just the fact the crowds, like, nah, man. Nah. Do you know what as well? I actually got a bigger reception than, because there wasn't many. I believe I had 3 people there myself, but I also, we had another boxer on that same show, and he had his team there, like his followers. I actually got a better reception than the guy from the home section, but it just put us off, mate. Just the whole crowd thing, and
it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that as well, because it was a few people that got into, when I was in the unlicensed game, the bare-knuckle game, a few people that got into it, and they had 1 or 2 fights.
Yeah.
Got out of it. And when I spoke to a few of them, not mentioning no names, when I spoke to a few of them, they said, mate, I couldn't handle the anxiety of the crowd.
Yeah, it's too much.
And these are people, again, not mentioning names. I know lads that are, I don't like to call them gym fighters, mate. I find it disrespectful, but they're hard guys. They're tough guys that put together like old leather boots, mate. And they're in the gym and they're just tough, mate. I mean, teak tough, pal.
Nice.
Really tough. And then when they get under the bright lights, they fall to pieces.
100%. Like I said,
sorry. Hard, mate. No, go on, mate. Go on,
it was like, I do believe, like, I shouldn't have even had my first fight there, like, because I was familiar with Berkeley anyway, and leading up to that fight, I've never trained so hard in my life just because of the name scared us alone. Just Berkeley Boxing Club just scared us alone. I remember running in snow, Seamus, honestly, slipping all over the shop, just banging the miles in constantly. It was horrendous.
It's vigorous, isn't it?
It was.
You've got to, again, Curtis Gagano always says, you've got to learn to want to do things that you don't want to do. That's the key. That's the key, mate. And it's hard. You've got to stay really consistent. But I bet now you'd think back to those days and you think, oh, it is. You think, I'm not having that again for a barrel of laughs. That's, you know what I mean? It's tough, isn't it? It's really, really tough.
It does. It pays testament to what you and fighters, because sometimes people, what drives us insane when people watch boxing and say, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that. Like, people outside of the boxing world, what people, they don't, and they will never be able to comprehend or perceive how much goes into what needs to be done to even achieve the levels to where you are.
100%, mate, 100%. And like I say, I mean, I'm not even where I want to be. I've spent, I think it's 6 years now in total, about 6 years in February that I started boxing. So yeah, 6 years and I'm nowhere near one of. You'll think you get to a certain level, and then you'll meet a guy, and you'll spar a guy, and he does know what he's doing. Foot placement, upper body movement, lateral movement, timing, turning the shots over brilliantly. And you meet these guys, and you go, all right, oh, there's another level. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
It's a lot more chess. The smarter man will prevail at the professional level. The smarter, more efficient, competent boxer will prevail. But like I say, I'm not where I want to be, mate. It's really hard. And like I say, I see the work that goes into it, mate. Myself, the work I put into it, it's sickeningly hard sometimes. And figuratively, it's hard, mate. But it is rewarding. I'll say that word again. It is massively rewarding, mate.
Quick question before we end the show. When I went, I know I fight nowhere near on your level, but referring back to the evolution of fighters, I remember sparring back in my day. Now I'm only 36. I'm 37 this year. I believe it was 12 years ago. I had me fight, but I had boxed. I had always been training boxing from the age of 17, 18. I remember sparring then. And then I came back 10, 11 years after. I went to the gym and they were training for, I think it was regional championships.
Yes, Jesus.
Right.
Yes.
And I'll never, ever forget that day, Seamus, because that is when I knew I had no place in a boxing ring. The level of change is ridiculous now.
Unreal.
It has changed. Have you found that? Obviously, I know you're going to find your levels different within your unlicensed, your bare knuckle boxing. Have you found that out over the past, I know it's only been a year, but have you seen the evolution of fighters since you were back in the day?
Yeah, do you know something, mate? It's like I think I touched on it before. The level of fighter there's no disrespect, but there is a massive gap, a massive gap, mate. It's what you're doing outside the gym.
Yeah, 1,000,000%.
Where you evolve. You know, they all say the fights are one away from the gym and the bright lights.
Yeah.
The evolution, you cannot cheat it. You just see it a lot nowadays, mate. You'll get kids at 15, 16, they'll box your lugs off, mate.
100%.
Box your ears off. They'll be 7 years old, the world, and they will box your lugs off. Like you said, it's humbling, isn't it?
It's very humbling. It's humbling, but it gives you your purpose. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm lucky, and like I say, with nerves and stuff like this, I'm lucky I've done this. I got into the podcast world. Like, I didn't think I would have the confidence and the stuff to go in the studio, although be with a friend. But even doing these now, I still get nervous now. Like, do you know what I'm saying? But yeah, I just, me personally, I just couldn't deal with it. That I knew then that I had a purpose. It wasn't in the ring.
Sorry for interrupting there, mate.
Oh,
we all get nervous over sometimes silly little things.
100%.
100%. You know what I mean? And you don't think other people go through these little things, but they do, you know, these little peccadillos. Everybody has them, mate. You know what I mean? Everybody has those little doubts. And then them little doubts can turn into something bigger, and your mind can make it from a molehill to a mountain. And that's
1,000,000%.
Yeah, it is hard, mate. Like I say, it's the nerves. I think that's what a lot of people didn't speak about back in the day. It's a lot more publicized now. It's a lot more open. Yeah, fighters are more of an open book. Back in the day, it was just man up, weren't it? Simple as that.
Basically.
It was just basically that was man up. But now, like I say, a lot of fighters, I mean, a lot of people see sports psychologists, hypnotists and stuff like that. And it works, mate, in some cases. I think the first case I was aware of it, well, there was the old hypnotist blag, weren't there, with Steve Collins and Chris Eubank. But then there was one that I seen officially where he was actually working alongside. I think he was a hypnotist. He was definitely a therapist of some nature, of some sort. Was Brian Rose?
Brian Rose.
Yeah, from Blackpool.
Yeah,
Blackpool,
I know.
And he worked alongside one. I think it was in the Maxwell fight, if I'm not mistaken. and he was tentative, he was gun shy, and he didn't know what to do, he didn't know why it was happening. But it just goes to show it's the mind, and it's a very powerful and abstract thing, and you don't know what's around that corner. You don't know what's going to befall you or what's coming your way, mate. So
100%.
You've got to learn to live with it. I've said this to somebody before: minimize your suffering.
100%.
Life is suffering, mate. Minimize that suffering. You got to enjoy this roller coaster.
I'm very, very, very sure Custom Martin said Mike Tyson said Custom Martin used to hypnotize him. Very sure. Very sure I did.
I'll have to look into that reference.
Very, very, very sure I did.
But there's definitely, if you look, there's a lot of fighters that were getting onto it. It's only been the last, say, 5 to 10 years where I've seen. I mean, I was going to approach one when I was in the bare knuckle game. I was going to approach one. I think I went on a 6-fight losing streak. I think it was 5 or 6, because I started off my career in winning ways, but not many people know that. But and I went on a bit of a streak, and I remember thinking I was just like freezing in there.
Yeah,
I wasn't like, there was something just wasn't right with me. I was training hard physically. I was, but that's when I realized, again, going back to you never stop learning, that it was the mind that I had to work on, not my physicality. I had to keep that in tune. I had to work out, but not as hard on the body. I had to be working out harder on this.
Yeah,
and like I said, spoke about now, the moment you speak about it and you're a bit more open, you can rectify things, mate, because this is the most important tool, no doubt.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. Without a shadow of a doubt. I believe helping others just releases great endorphins for yourself. I really do. And I think it also helps yourself as well in your own self with your own problems. Do you know what I mean? So
no doubt.
100%.
Like I say, when you're training, mate, you're out there releasing them endorphins, you feel good, then you feel good. That feel good factor, it spreads off around other people. You're a positive force to the people around you. That's why people say surround yourself with positive influences. For a reason, because it's like that domino effect, and it's a powerful thing, mate. I've seen it with guys that I know when I come out of my pit of despair, and people that I know that were seeing my escalation, my rise, so to speak, and they were like, wow, you can see them. Some of them didn't admit it, but some of them did, and actually came to me and said, listen, mate, you've inspired me. And it's powerful, that mate, that makes it all worthwhile. You see someone going, you know what, mate, you've given me a push. Seeing you do what you're doing, it's given me a push, mate. So yeah, it's important, mate. It's important to get them, like you said, get them endorphins released. That feel-good factor. We all need it.
Well, definitely all need it. Right, Seamus, that's the first one done. So that's it, my brother. That is the first Fighter in the Geek. People, like I say, we'll have some more new boxing news. I'm very sure next week for you. Like we said earlier in the show, Seamus will touch down with Shane and we'll get something sorted with that. Seamus, how do you think it's went?
I think it went absolutely brilliant, pal. As I said, well, we will be keeping people updated with up-to-date current boxing news, domestic and global. So today, obviously, I was a little bit unprepared, as we were supposed to have a segment with Shane, but like I said, for unforeseen circumstances, it didn't go ahead. But everyone keep your eyes peeled, because there's going to be more coming from me and Lee. I could speak to this guy all day about boxing. I think he could
vice
say
versa. Vice versa.
We're going to have on, mate, and some of the ideas we've brainstormed and come up with. Once this takes its shape and it finds its shape, it's going to be flying, mate, no doubt.
No worries about that, and I have no absolute guarantee. Honestly, it will. I feel it. I just feel it will work. Right. That's it, people. Fighter and the Geek. Thank you so much for watching. Guys, love yous to pieces.
Signing out, people. God bless.